I'm still not getting used to not hearing that this meeting is being recorded. Still not hearing it. Good morning, everybody. Today is January 28th, 2023. It's a Saturday, the last Saturday of the month, and the last Saturday before Championship Sunday. My name is Bill Woodcock. You're tuning in to another edition of Forward Maryland. And Steve, I got the 49ers, and I could care less who wins the AFC. I'd rather, both teams get dysentery and the game not even happen. And the 49ers and the Eagles play in the Super Bowl. Who you got? And introduce yourself, by the way.
Well, I was going to say good morning. Happy championship weekend, everybody. I am Steve Hunt, I think. Yeah, I am still. As far as championship weekend, Bill, I actually do have an interest in the AFC because obviously we're Ravens fans, so we follow a lot of AFC. But I have family in law. My wife's family is in Kansas City. I've been to Kansas City many times. Lovely town. So I have no issue with Kansas City. Whereas I'm starting to develop more and more issues as a Ravens fan against Cincinnati, who after winning like a couple of games after like 50 years have really just become jerks. It was just Eli Apple. You have the mayor with this video making like he's Maury Povich saying that, is Joe Burrow Patrick Mahomes' daddy? I mean, the Cancun on 3 with the Bills. So, they are, as Bill, you and I being longtime wrestling fans, they are becoming the heels of the NFL. So I want Kansas City to win by 90 and send Cincinnati back to their place in the AFC hierarchy as, losers who can't get it done even when they should be able to get it done. So I am all in for Kansas City. I do support the San Francisco pick in the NFC. They're just a great story. One, a well-run franchise. And then, you can't not like Brock Purdy. So I'm looking San Francisco, Kansas City. I know that's a rematch, I think, from a couple of years ago, but I'm with that.
Yeah. I mean, this was Buffalo's year. I mean, how could you not have how could you root against Buffalo?
Yes.
And damn it, we would have beaten Cincinnati had Lamar played. We almost beat Cincinnati as it was. We outplayed those turkeys. Your analogy of them being the heels, they're not just the heels, they're the monster heels. They are just unliked by anybody. It's not that, it's not, the Hart Foundation cheered in Canada, booed in the U.S. situation. I mean, these guys are cheered in Cincinnati and in their environs, I guess Kentucky, and booed everywhere. I mean, I just don't want them. But I don't want Kansas City either, but I dig where you're coming from with the family connection. That is legit. So Steve, I want to let you kick off the first topic today. We have 3 topics for viewers and listeners' edification. I would like for you to tee up the first topic, if you will, so that because I know you want to talk about. And I think a very important part of this podcast today is talking about talking about behaviors and violence. And I'd like for you to tee up the first topic.
Sure, Bill, and thanks for that lead in and the time here. It's no secret to anybody who follows politics and political discourse in this country that things have just gotten really bad. And, the answer is no longer, hey, we lost an election, so we're going to, get ourselves together. We're going to refine our ideas or get better ideas or our approach of how we communicate to people. And we lost fair and square, but next time we're gonna go in the lab, we're gonna figure out what we did wrong, and we're gonna come back out, we're gonna kick your behind. Okay, fine. That is perfectly fine. We have many stories of presidents who lost before they won. I mean, our current president lost twice and
Mhm.
figured out a way to finally get the dub. You have other ones. I won't go through history, but that's how it's been. A party falls out of power, they lose an election or two or three, and they figure out, okay, what went wrong, and they right the ship. That seems not to be where we are today in American politics as it relates to the Republican Party. And I am not going to both sides this. I refuse to both sides this. It's not politics has gone wrong and people are resorting to no, it's the Republican Party of today is resorting to this sort of behavior. And I can't even blame Donald Trump for this one. Again, as I've said, I think the pot was boiling for a very long time. Republican leaders, nationally, state, local, were keeping a lid on it. Donald Trump was just the one who took the lid off and said, "Go for it." So here we are. We have a story about this Republican candidate in New Mexico, of all places. That you just don't see New Mexico as a place where this would happen. But actually, their local gun laws do actually, they're actually pretty loose out there. So this individual, who I won't even name, won't even give him that dignity, decides his answer to losing an election is to shoot up the homes of Democrats. So not, hey, I lost. I mean, Bill, you've run for office. I've run for office. We've both lost. And you just say, okay, I lost. I'm sorry that happened. Congratulations to the winner. Thank you, everybody who supported me. And, we move on. Not now, not with this party in some circles. He decides he's going to shoot up, was it 3 or 4 homes? This came out right before the video was released of the attack of Paul Pelosi, husband of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, where the guy's wielding a hammer. And part of the video shows the cops show up and you can see the guy, swinging the hammer and hitting Paul Pelosi. And then you see Pelosi on the ground on the body cam. That's where we are. You still have Carrie Lake running around saying she's still won, that she's, says that we need to overturn the election to stall the proper government. You have Lindsey Graham, who once was a respectable member of Congress when Trump was visited by our friends with the FBI at Mar-a-Lago for the classified document, says, if you indict him, things are going to be really, really bad. I mean, a not so veiled threat there. So the fact that violence has become the way in which people express themselves after not getting their way, quite frankly, is ridiculous. It's obscene. It's everything that is wrong. And quite frankly, and I'll get off the soapbox from here, Bill, when you combine the fact that people through social media, through what I call the conservative entertainment complex, are fed this stuff, these lies, whether it's Pizzagate or God knows what else, and it's presented as the truth, and you have people buying into it, people who quite frankly have issues and, to some degree ain't quite 100% right with our very lax gun laws, where, as we saw in California, they've got great gun laws, very strict. But you can go to Arizona and get one. Here in Maryland, we've got gun laws that are pretty tight, but somebody can go to Pennsylvania and get what they need. I mean, hell, a school shooter could leave first thing in the morning, grab a coffee, go to Pennsylvania, and be back to a school by lunchtime and go to work. So you combine all of those things, and it's just a toxic brew that, quite frankly, scares the hell out of me. And I just hope that it doesn't discourage people from running for office, for serving in some capacity, board of elections. I mean, I can talk about the board of election people who have had to quit or go into hiding, Gretchen Whitmer and the attempted kidnapping. We could go on and on and on. And that's the point. We can go on and on and on. That's how bad it is. We could do a whole podcast about this. And it's sick, it's deranged. I don't know what the answer is, but you know, somebody's got to call it for what it is, and that's what hopefully I'm doing here. So, Bill, I'll turn it back over to you and get your thoughts. But it's toxic, man. It's bad.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but my face dropped while I was listening to you, and the reason why that happened, and this is why we probably need to not do these at 8:30 on Saturdays anymore. We need to think about this more, because what's very, very sad but true about what you said is that our whole podcast today is going to be about this. It's
Yeah.
all going to be about misbehavior, lack of respect, lack of, I hate to use this Howard County buzzword, but I'm going
Here it
to
comes.
civility, but it's just lack of common decency. And, as we talk about the second topic today, that is all about violence and brutal violence and police violence. So you all can guess what we're going to talk about. And then the third topic today is about just lack of humanity and lack of proper behavior. And frankly, I'm surprised that it hasn't gotten into a violent state yet. And there are some people out there who would say that it is already. I don't have a lot to add to what you said, other than it is disgusting what goes on. It's disgusting that it is really, I won't say 100%, but I would say 85% coming from one side of the aisle, and that it's tolerated from people on that side of the aisle. And what at least I see people on the left side talk about when they talk about, the person who goes off occasionally on a leftist rampage and, does crazy things, is that at least they say, they don't justify it.
Mhm.
They talk about the problems. They talk about, this wouldn't be going on if there weren't real solutions. I hate that term, common sense gun solutions.
Yeah.
But they don't try to justify it. On the right side, they seem to say a lot more, well, if only, our liberal government wasn't this way, then maybe we wouldn't have that happen. And I think that's trash. I just really think that's trash. The guy in New Mexico, I hope they put him away for multiple lifetimes. The guy who attacked former Speaker Pelosi's husband, I hope he gets put away for multiple lifetimes. These bums need to say, bum politicians, bum activists, bums in general just need to say political violence is not cool.
Mhm.
And Steve, we had that here, and you talked about it being in Howard County. We started to have that here in Howard County, and not the most recent, but in 2020 in the freaking school board election.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Yeah.
you remember, there were people protesting outside of school board members' homes.
True. Yeah.
And they were people on both sides of the aisle who were doing that.
Yeah. I agree.
And I mean, police had to come and intervene. It was not pretty. It was not pleasant. And we are not any better.
Mhm.
What is sad, and I'll end on this, is shameless plug. People who follow me on social media know that I'm compiling my written blog posts into a book. It looks like it's going to be 2.
Wow.
With exclusive Marshmallow Man content,
Uh-oh.
updated just for these publications. But what we're talking about goes back 15 years.
Yeah.
When I started writing this blog. It's not anything new, but it's getting worse and it needs to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And you're right about that board of ed example, and I forgot about that. And whether it's that, I mean, just the fact that people feel like they have a license to invade other people's privacy and their private lives. And I've said this before, even the whole thing about I'm going to disrupt somebody's dinner to the point where they have to leave a restaurant. That ain't good either. It's not violent like shooting up people's homes and coming to people's houses in a threatening manner. But even that, the fact that we're in a society where people feel like they have license to do that sort of thing is a sad commentary. It really and truly is. And unfortunately, when you have bad actors and people who, like I said, they ain't right, um, they're in this toxic brew and they have access to firearms and their brains can't process things in a certain way to say, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should just make a sign and hold it out in front of their, you know, you know, congressional office or something. It all comes together in a very sick way. It really does.
Hmm. It does. So let's talk about this next thing, because this is also going to be just horrible and horrific. The Tyree Phillips video.
Mhm.
There were protests in Memphis and many other cities across the United States last night. I know there were protests in Washington. I'm not sure if there were any protests in Baltimore. About the release, surrounding the issue of police brutality and surrounding the occasion of the release of the video of the Tyree Phillips beating. Steve, I don't think it really matters. I mean, because, the part that doesn't matter is that people were wondering whether or not this would be worse than the Rodney King video of 30 years ago. For those who want to have that question answered, for my money, it's worse. But it really doesn't matter if it's worse or not as severe or whatever. It's a brutal beating. For people who don't want to watch the video, have at it. You don't have to. If it's traumatizing, troubling, disturbing, you don't have the stomach for it, that's cool. But I watched parts of it last night and this morning, and it's horrific. And what's killing me here is that there are only 5 police who are undergoing charges, because
Mhm.
I could count at least 12 separate cops. And I don't know. I mean, the thing that you don't see is, why did they pull the guy over? We still don't know. What did he do? The first thing you hear him saying on the video is, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. Um, and then, for the sensitivity of the people who would rather not watch the video, I'm sure you're probably not really relishing a big description of it. Let's just say things go downhill from there.
Mhm.
But how many cops, be they decked out in top gear, which we know, includes bulletproof vests, gun, pepper spray, handcuffs, baton, any number of things that will cause bodily damage to someone or death. How many cops need to pull over an unarmed guy? I mean, is it a dozen? When is too much too much? And this video and just this overall issue of police behavior is really something that we need to get a curb on in this country. I respect that the president, is not a supporter of defund the police and is a supporter of, police being the frontline personnel responsible for enforcing the rule of law in this country. I respect all of that, but you just can't look at this issue of police behavior and say that nothing's wrong and just say that it's a few bad apples. If surgeons were routinely killing patients on the table, you wouldn't just say that there were just a few bad apple surgeons. You would go back and you would look throughout the entire continuum of care, and you would change how surgery is conducted from the day that a student walks into medical school, from day one. Why aren't we doing this with how our police are educated, trained, hell, selected. Why aren't we doing better? We can't apparently do what other countries do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't have police who are unarmed, or who don't look like, junior versions of the local military. Why can't we be better with this? After decades and decades of police brutality being right into our living rooms, Steve, why can't we be better?
Because it takes will. It takes a real will on the part of many. If you're talking about whether it's a national level, a state level, or a local level to make that happen. Um, like you, Bill, I had a difficult time collecting my thoughts for this morning, for this podcast, because I knew we were going to talk about it. I did watch the video. I initially had decided I was not going to watch the video. I saw 2 out of, I believe, the 4 that were released, and that was more than enough. And you talked about the comparison between this video and Rodney King, and I agree with you, Bill. I don't know that the point is which one is worse. Here's my point. Rodney King, that video and that incident was in 1990, 91, 92, give or take. Yeah. And here we are 30 plus years later, and we're still having the conversation. That's the point. The point isn't which one is worse. The point is the shit's still happening.
Right. Why is it still going on?
Exactly. So I want folks out there who may hear this to, when you don't compare the two, connect the two, as in it's still out there. It's still happening. If you're a fan of hip hop, back in the 90s, you had, of course, NWA's infamous F the Police. I was reminded of a song, The Sound of the Police by KRS-One. And everything they talked about, again, in the early 1990s, we were having these conversations about police brutality. And there were other artists who were expressing themselves in a similar way. And 30 years later, we're still having this conversation. And of course, as a kid growing up in Prince George's County, we were seeing this 20 years before the 90s. My dad had, I grew up the youngest of 4 boys. My dad had the talk with us in the 1970s. And here we are in 2023. And parents, especially parents of color, have to have that same damn conversation with their young kids of color. As you know, Jace, we've talked about the fact that I have a son. He is an athlete. He just turned 15. Until he opens his mouth and gets right up on you, you would not look at him as a 15-year-old. You would look at him as a full-grown man, because he is not a small human being. And yes, I think about him, and I think about kids like him. And the fact that we have yet another generation that has to grow up in a country that has to worry about what might happen when they get pulled over, and it depends on which person with the shield is pulling you over, whether or not it's have a conversation about whatever may or may not have happened. Maybe you get a ticket, maybe you get a warning, whatever the case may be. Life goes on and life ends. An encounter with an officer of the law should not be literally a game of Russian roulette, where depending on who it is that pulls you over, your life's gonna go one way or the other, including being ended. There's so many questions. And by the way, Bill, you talked about the 5 cops that got arrested. Let me just say, I give credit to the Memphis Police Department, the chief of police. She acted very quickly. They had a very quick investigation. They got fired. They got charged. I am now hearing that there will be or could be others involved. I get there are a couple of EMTs that just showed up and stood around and let the cops carry on. I think there's some other police officers. I don't think this is going to be the end of this situation. The one thing that I found interesting that was said by Benjamin Crump. I'm sure everybody knows who he is. He seems to be around these things, and he had a press conference yesterday with the family of Tyree Nichols. And what he said was he applauded the efforts of the Memphis police, but he said this should now be the blueprint. You know, from now on, if this happens, there should not be months and months and months of investigation and this and that and the other, no matter what the cops look like, because these 5 officers were black. But it should not matter. You know, if there's another incident, and God, I hope there isn't, but I fear that there will be. This is how it should be handled. So you hope that in terms of handling when it happens, that's the blueprint of how the law applies even to officers of the law. As far as your question, Bill, which is an important one, I don't know what the answer is. Well, I know what the answer is, but I don't know if there's the will to do anything about it. You know, there was an attempt in the Senate to do the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that died on the vine, and certainly with the current makeup of our House of Representatives, that ain't happening. I think now it almost becomes a state and local thing to where jurisdictions are going to have to do it themselves. Memphis. Hopefully, there's some reforms, especially to this what do they call it, the Scorpion Unit that was a part of this. Maryland, I believe our own Delegate Atterbury put forth legislation in the past session that addressed certainly policing. We now have body cams in Howard County. So sadly, I think it's going to become for now jurisdictional. I don't think there's a national solution out there that one side of the aisle, the Republican side, will ever acknowledge or even do anything about. But that's where we are. It is a sad state. It is a sad state where we can summarize the whole thing by saying, here we go again. And that's what we do. We go again and again and again and again. As Attorney Crump said, the hashtags go on. It's hashtag Tyree Nichols or Justice for Tyree or say his name. I mean, we'll just keep piling up hashtags until somehow we collectively develop the will to stop it from happening in the first place. And it's sad that but that is where we are. So.
Well, and I mean, we're not just talking about one big issue where everybody knows that there's a big problem, but nobody wants to do anything about it. Let's, while we're at it, let's throw in gun violence. Let's throw in poverty. Let's throw in, homelessness. Let's throw all of that in. And, here's my bleeding heart coming out of me. What do all of these things have in common? They mostly affect people who are poor, people who are without privilege, people who are of color. God knows our Congress is, and even state legislature, and frankly, I'll even say county council, are much more adept at, talking about tax breaks for, some sort of corporate welfare. They're much more adept at zooming through, large, block grants or, aid packages. And, I very much support, I know a couple people who are very pissy about United States aid to the Ukraine. Well, the United States has a mission to promote democracy around the world. I don't argue that. But, while we're getting 85 to 15 votes in the Senate in favor of foreign aid packages, how about if we get 85 to 15 votes in the Senate that have to do with re-educating police, that have to do with, licensing handguns, or at least registering users or buyers, so that some way there's a system. I mean, to the point you made, Steve, about, about gun sales. Hell, if my neighbor next door wants to sell me his gun for $20, he can. There's nothing stopping him. And there's all sorts of under the radar gun sales that go on in the state of Maryland. So, Yeah, there are laws on the books. That doesn't mean they get followed. And yeah, I mean, and I could go drive up to York right now and walk into a gun show and walk out with as much weaponry as I desire.
Yep.
As you know, as long as I'm willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of just evil stuff that is allowed to go on, and we just keep looking the other way at it. And what I really want to know, and maybe this is a bigger point, and maybe now I'm getting out there for today's podcast, maybe now the caffeine's kicking in. But when are people who are on all sides of the aisle going to understand that they're getting played?
Yeah.
Because what really happens is that all of this discord and all of this disagreement and all of this crap that goes on in this country, all of this argument is good for business. It's good for the business of politics. It's good for the business of advocacy. It's good for the business of lobbying. It's good for nonprofit organizations, be they National Right to Life or be they Planned Parenthood. It's good for business. And there is a probably hundreds of $billion business that goes on 25 miles to our south.
Yeah.
That is called our political infrastructure and everything that supports it, the lobbyists, the nonprofit advocates, all of that. When are regular folks going to start to stand up against all this shit? And when are they going to start to say, you know what? We want actual change. We want you to support change, not just talk a whole lot of puff that is going to automatically get shot down by the other side. I mean, that's a rhetorical question, and we got another big issue to talk about in like the 15 minutes we got left, plus announcing the next show. I'll be happy if you have a short answer for that, Steve. But it's a bigger issue. When the hell are we going to realize that we're all being played?
I don't know, but we clearly are. And you're absolutely right, Bill. And you talked about, a little bit down to the south. You're absolutely right. And I won't go any further. I could talk for days about that. But, I would just say, and I'm sure there are public reports out there, check the net worth of members of Congress before they were elected and look at where it is now. You look at, I'll both sides the hell out of this thing. Pull up Lauren Boebert on one side and Kyrsten Sinema maybe on the other side. I'm not quite sure, but pull up their net worths. I mean, there's been reporting, so you might guess I pulled up their names on purpose of what their net worths are before they were elected and now, or pick anybody. Doesn't matter who. It'll be anybody you pluck, and maybe anybody not named Bernie Sanders, but. There's the game right there, and you're right. Let's move on because I really could get on a huge soapbox and I don't want to do it.
Oh, I know. And I wasn't saying that to cut you off. I mean, we could talk about it for 2 friggin' hours. And we don't have 2 friggin' hours. And we would still get nowhere because it's still going to be as jacked up a system as it was before.
Yeah.
So item 3. Steve, when we last talked about the Columbia Association, I made the point that, again, as I'm going through the 53 Beers on Tap blog archives from 2008 on, people have been complaining about the incompetence of the CA board of directors for at least 15 years. Hell, it's at least the 23 years I've lived in Columbia, and it's much longer. Probably goes back to the beginning of the Columbia Association itself. And just because the ineptitude continues doesn't make it okay. And it also makes what's going on extremely dangerous, especially in light of what we've just been talking about. Because when is some of this stuff going to erupt in some violence? And it's erupting in some crazy behavior. Okay, Bill, so what are you talking about? Well, I'll tell you out there, viewers and listeners. The CA president, Lakey Boyd, resigned on Thursday, hours prior to the CA board meeting. And said CA board meeting therefore became a circus. One other board member resigned, the representative from Long Reach, who I happen to know quite well and is a friend. The general counsel of CA resigned, who was already under fire for how he was working with the president and working with the board. And now a search has been voted. A search has been requested by the CA board to start a search for a new president and CAO of Columbia Association. Good luck to whoever they're going to get, because I'm going to tell you, I'm really going to doubt that a lot of the serious candidates who had put themselves up for a nomination to that high post last time are going to be interested in this affair.
Mhm.
And so the meeting itself, I'd like to spend a little bit of time and talk about the meeting itself.
Please, so we're gonna get some
I
on
don't
the ground
understand what it
reporting.
was. I don't understand what it was. I don't understand this latest thing that people are doing, but people are very much now into recording what people say at meetings. And I guess I get that. But now the latest thing seems to be taking pictures of speakers with their cell phones, and even taking pictures of people standing around at the board meeting talking with each other. People standing in the hallway talking. Somebody will snap a picture. Who frankly cares? And I read an exchange between two people I know online. One of the people is an attorney. The other one is a local activist here in Oakland Mills. And the person who was an attorney was talking about taking video of people while they're talking is not cool. And the other person said, well, I was taking video. Well, you're wrong. I wasn't taking video. And he said, yes, you were. And she said, well, it was only of the unethical board chair. So you just said you were taking video of the unethical board chair. I mean, is the unethical board chair not a human being? How do you justify this lunacy?
Yeah.
I mean, this is ridiculous. We have way too many people with way too much time on their hands who have way too little to do, that they're going to go into this level of apoplexy over the Columbia Association. But also, there are people who have money at stake, because some of those activists who are so up in arms, they either directly or indirectly through family or through business interests have business interest in Columbia's development or redevelopment. And that's where this looks not entirely genuine. The CA board of directors needs serious change. I don't really know anymore what the best way to change it is. I was a bit supportive of the Rouse Project when it first came out, until it started to do stupid things. And then I didn't like the lack of openness, the lack of transparency, the secrecy in terms of the money flows, and eventually the proximity to Howard Hughes and other entities, of whom development in Columbia is key in their mind. I especially didn't like it when we interviewed a Rouse project funded candidate. This was Jason and I.
Right.
And the person, who very much is otherwise a champion for transparency and openness and equality and diversity and inclusion, said they really didn't care and they didn't know where their money was coming from to support their campaign. That's really disingenuous to me, and that really is inconsistent. And that person is better than that, and they should have known better. So I can't say as I'm on board with any Rouse Project 2.0 candidates or anything like that. But what I am on board with is that the second largest town in Maryland, city in Maryland, if it were a city, not being run like a friggin' like a friggin' general store in Mayberry. In fact, much worse than. Maybe maybe a better analogy would be a service station, in the service bays with the people yelling at each other and tossing wrenches at each other. I'm sorry, I've gone on enough, Steve. I mean, I know if I only left you with like 3 minutes to 4 minutes to talk about this crap, but Mr. Outside of Columbia, what do you make of this trash?
Well, from the view from outside of Columbia is, what in the hell are you people doing up there? Is the short answer. And you're right, it's a total mess. And the whole recording, I love how you talked about, you're recording somebody. There might be some legal issue there. And oh, by the way, while you're acknowledging it, you're making some pretty disparaging remarks about them, accusing them of being unethical. So, now we can get into defamation of character. So, you're really walking a pretty tough line there legally.
It
My friend.
really blows the mind. I mean, and I know this person is very intelligent. Anyway, go on.
So there's that, and then the whole Rouse project. You're right, and I think the key thing you said, Bill, was Rouse project supported candidates, and I think, and I've said this before, maybe on another podcast. That's where I think the Rouse project went wrong. I think if it were just a nonprofit organization that was talking about how to reimagine Columbia and had their mission statement and their view of this is what we see in Columbia and this is what we see our leaders as needing to address, period, stop, and let everything else play out the way it was. But they literally were supporting candidates in individual races, which really smacked of they're just trying to take control of the CA board. So if there is a Rouse Project 2.0, keep it high level, stick to vision, talk about the issues that you feel are important, and then let the people decide which candidates actually fit within that vision if the people agree with that vision. Don't look like you're trying to buy yourselves a board of directors. But other than that, yeah, it's you talked about Ms. Boyd's resignation. You talked about the resignation of the Long Reach member. I know Andy Stack, who's the Owen Brown member, wrote a very lengthy letter after Ms. Boyd's resignation, and he talked about a number of things. But one thing he talked about was the need for change. I think he clearly was saying that some of his colleagues do not need to be serving on the board anymore. He also threw out the idea of maybe there should not be another president selected until after the CA board elections and let a quote unquote new board make that selection. So I think there clearly is a call on the part of that member of the CA board to bring some change to the entirety of the organization. I think you mentioned there's already a candidate that may or may not be Rouse Project funded running in Oakland Mills. So I think it's going to be an interesting couple of months to see how the CA board and whoever ends up being president comes out the other side. Do we come out better, a new day, a new relationship, and things move forward? Or is it going to continue to be the mess that it clearly is right now? And you would know better than I do, but from the outside looking in, it looks like it's going to continue to be a mess because I don't see any of those board members who I think we would both agree, without naming names, need to go. They'll probably be still sitting in those chairs after the elections.
Yeah, I know we've only got a short amount of time, and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna belabor anything. I think maybe I just hate everybody involved in CA right now. And I'm just so tired of the mayhem. I'm tired of the nonsense. But you know what? I know it's going to continue. Again, Steve, that's why I see a common thread throughout this whole podcast.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. It's things that we know are going to continue. They're not going to get any better. Suppose a whole bunch of new CA board members are put in. Then there's still going to be people from the other side yelling and fussing at those people. Why can't we all just grow up, play in the sandbox, and do our things? Part of it is because, again, like I've said, there's lots of money to be made. And, there's lots of arrogance avarice. You opened this podcast by talking about ideas. The longer I go into civic discourse and the more reason why I'm withdrawing from civic involvement is because we have severely gone off track in terms of, as a society, county, state, I'll say country, being about ideas. We are about personalities and perceptions, not about what is good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know what gets us back on track. What might get us back on track is the mirth and merriment, or at least us back on track, us feeling better about society at this moment, is a good old-fashioned awards show.
There we go.
And we have one coming up a week from tomorrow. The original gangsta, Jason Booms, will be joining us. We will have a dozen awards for your edification and probably for your horror. And even some of you out there in viewer and listener land may be named in these awards. Who knows? Who knows? But I believe I will make a pledge right now not to beat up or verbally, physically, or spiritually, emotionally, or mentally do any harm to Jason and Steve during this podcast. So we will keep our side of our corner of the street clean. If only everybody else does the damn same.
So in other words, no hosts were injured or harmed in the making of that podcast. There we go. We'll do the whole
but you know what? There's
movies.
going to be some egos and some noses at a joint. And, I mean, you've seen my four. I've tried to be nice.
Really?
I've tried to be nice, but I'm not sure it's going to come out so nice because I'm so disgusted by all the trash.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Bill, I'm looking at, your four and my two, and Jason being Jason, it's going to be on. And this has been a tough podcast, Bill, because there were some serious subjects and we had to treat them as such. But for those of you who like the banter and the craziness that normally comes with Bill and myself and obviously Jason, you're going to get so much of that. It's not funny. Or is it funny? We don't know.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. Jason, Jason, how can I not tell you and Jason apart? I mean, you both have glasses.
Yeah,
that must be it.
He's my brother.
Any closing words as we wrap up this fine production of Forward Maryland episode 212, which means we're at the boiling point.
Well, so are a lot of folks around here, but no, Jason is my brother from another mother. So no party words, Bill. Like I said, we put a lot out there. Hopefully, it gave some folks things to think about. We asked a lot of questions. Maybe somebody smarter than the two of us can find an answer, or as we like to hear in wrestling circles, the testicular fortitude to do something about some of this shit. But other than that, no, Bill, I'm good to go and looking forward to the award show. And I'm deciding whether or not to wear Gucci or Sergio, or I don't know who I'm wearing, but I'll be wearing something.
I might go Timothy Chalamet and wear a gown. That might happen. You never know. Who knows? Who knows? I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time. And as Steve said out there, viewers and listeners, you will not want to miss the award show. It's always a good source of fun, of high level, of high jocularity, entertainment, and more than a couple moments of, oh my God, they said that. I can't believe that happened. So something to look forward to. Anyway, we got to scoot. So for Steve, I'm Bill. You have been watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. Join us next Sunday for the 2022 award show. The highlight of your podcast season. Till then, have a great weekend and week, everybody. Take care.